So guys, welcome to the next module in the sales week. Now in this module, I want to talk about objections and objection handling. Now I touched on this in the last module where I talked about the sales script, and you guys would have seen me talk about it at near the end of the sales script, as obviously this is where majority of objections come into play. Now, before we talk about, or at least get into how to handle them and what to say and like in terms of like rebuttaling them and all that type of stuff, let's first touch on what they actually are. So what are objections? Objections are merely smoke screens for another problem, okay? Usually the client is a wimp, okay? Usually the client is a wimp, and so instead of saying what they really think, they throw a different line out, commonly called an objection, so that they can avoid what their actual problem is. So for the most part, people are usually scared to say, this, what's a good, a common one, very, very common one. The price is too much, okay? But instead of the client saying that the price is too much, they would rather say something else that doesn't, that they'd rather go around it in a different way, is basically what I mean. So a common, as I say, a very, very common example of this is, let's say, for example, the client genuinely thinks the price is too much and they don't want to sign up because of that. Instead of them saying that, instead of them literally just saying to you, price is too much, it's not going to work, thanks for your time. Instead of saying that, they'd say, let me think about it, or I can't sign up right now because I need to think about it, right? It's a smoke screen. It's not actually what they think. There's an underlying problem. And instead of them mentioning that underlying problem, as I say, they throw out what's called an objection. Now, don't worry about objections because that's all they are, okay? If they say, let me think about it, they don't need to think about it. They know there and then. It's another underlying problem. As I say, the price is too much is just an example, but it's a common one, okay? And that's all objections are. They're just merely smoke screens for another problem, okay? Now, with objections also comes logistical objections. Now, logistical objections, well, as I say there in the first point there are also logistical objections which are legit, okay? Logistical objections are essentially legit objections. They're objections that are actually truthful and that they genuinely mean what they're saying, okay? This is when the client says an objection as to why they can't sign up there and then, but only this time it's because of a legit reason. They genuinely cannot sign up because of X reason, right? In this event, you always want to set up a 15-minute follow-up meeting, preferably within the next 72 hours of the current call. Now, logistical objections, for the most part, come in the form of the client needing to speak to someone else. Again, for the most part, that other person usually is a business partner. So it's another person within the business who they're partnered up with, who they genuinely need to speak to before they can go forward with you. And so when they say, I need to speak to my business partner about it, 99% of the time, that's a logistical objection. There's no way of you getting around that because they genuinely cannot sign up with you until they converse with their business partner, right? And so in that case, that's why we always want to record the call, because this is when you want to make sure you send the client the call recording after the call, so that they can then pass that over to the business owner, the business partner, and then they can re-watch the recording of the call, because you're going to be able to sell your services better than the client you had the call with would be able to, regurgitate what you said to them to the business partner, if that makes sense. If I'm the business partner and an agency came to me and was trying to sell me a service, and I was like, I need to talk to my business partner about this before I sign up, that agency will be able to sell my business partner a lot better than I would be able to go and then regurgitate what the agency told me on the call. So you'll find your conversion rates are often a lot higher. So that's another main reason why you want to, or a super important reason as to why you always want to record your calls and send the client the call recording. A little bit of a side tangent there, but that's a logistical objection, okay? They genuinely cannot sign up because of X reason. Now this, as I say, business partners are often the main reason. They're often, that's often the most common logistical objection, is because the client needs to speak to a business partner. Now though, there is other logistical objections, okay? Things This is just another example I can think of. Off the top of my head. Like maybe it's like the end of June, so it's the end of financial year, and for whatever reason they genuinely can't sign on with you until next month, which is July, the start of the new financial year. Something like that. It's a logistical objection. Okay, they genuinely cannot sign up because of a certain reason. Now, they're the two types of objections. There's objections which are merely smoke screens for another problem, and then there's logistical objections, which is a genuine reason as to why they can't sign up. Okay, with objections though, this is where objection handling comes into play, because as I say, it's a smoke screen for another problem. So you really want to get to the root cause, and you really want to figure out and get them to tell you what their actual problem is. And then at least at that point, you can almost go around it in a different way. And as I say, sell them from there on in. With logistical objections, there's no way of getting around it, because the root cause is genuinely what they're telling you, and they genuinely can't sign up until they've done whatever it is that they've said that they need to do. So let's talk about handling objections, okay? Because as I say, there's a way to go about handling the smokescreen objections. So let's get into that. This is another sheet that you can find in the resources section. Now, this is an objection handling sheet, okay? One thing you want to remember, okay? You always want to answer the objection directly, and then transition into tying it back to the sale and, if possible, their underlying problem. So you would have heard me, obviously, in the last module where I talked about the sales script and whatnot, we went in depth about the driving reason and making sure that you always position your service as a solution to their driving reason. Well, the same thing applies when you're doing, when you're handling objections. You always want to answer the objection directly and then try your best to tie it back to the underlying problem. Now, you're not always going to be able to tie it back to the underlying problem, but just make sure you're thinking about the underlying problem and just see on the call if there's a way that you can tie it back, because if you can, again, it's going to position your service as the solution to their problem, and that's also going to make it a no-brainer to the client as well, as we already know because we discussed this in detail in the last module. But look, here are the 4 most common objections. First, I need time to think about it. As I said in the as I said just before at the start of this module, I need time to think about it, or let me think about it. This is probably the number 1 most common objection that you'll actually get, okay? Just a very generic answer that you can use off the top of your head is, look, Steve, I totally understand that I threw a lot of information at you today, but what is it that you need time to think about that we can't discuss here? Usually that will get them speaking. Usually that will get them to open up a bit more about, as I say, the underlying problem. All of these objections are smoke screens. They all have underlying problems, okay? And things like, as I say, the best answer to the objection of I need time to think about it is, look, Steve, I totally understand that I threw a lot of information at you today, but what is it that you need to think about that we can't discuss here? As I said, that will often get them talking about their underlying problem, in which you can then really discuss and diagnose, and then again, position your service as the solution to that underlying problem, okay? Now, the next one, I can't afford it. The best answer that I've come across for this objection is, Steve, you are leaving X amount of money on the table every single month. After the initial 2 to 3 months, our service fee is going to be that insignificant to you that you won't even notice it being paid in comparison to the sheer amount of sales that we'll be generating you. Again, very broad answer, but it's a great answer to that objection of I can't afford it. Now though, if you're doing everything right, if you're following this program as you should be, you're setting everything up and you're making sure you're keeping your eye out for these kind of red flags and whatnot, this is an objection that you often shouldn't hear too much, because for those clients who aren't qualified, then you know they're not qualified a lot earlier on in the process. First things first, you should know that they're not qualified from the qualification points that we have before we even reach out to a client. But if they almost fall through that, okay, if they fall through that, then the next kind of point that they come to is the application form. If they fill that out and you can see they're making 10,000 a month, then you don't even get on a call with them. There's no point. So there's so many filters that you have before you get to this point in the call. So you actually shouldn't hear this objection too much. but it is one of the most common ones. But as I say, it's only common when you don't have things set in place before this point in the call. So you shouldn't hear this too much, because if they can't afford it, then it's because they're not qualified. But you guys know that we're very, very big in the Quantum Leap Ecomm Agency program. In this community, we're very big on ensuring our clients are qualified, and there's a lot of filtration points up until this point in the process. And so if they filter through all of that, then as I say, that's the best answer you should say to them, but you actually shouldn't hear this one too much. Okay, now the next one, I've been stung in the past by previous agencies. Now this is a very, very common one. This is one that I personally still get I personally still get told this, or this objection is still one that I hear to this day. And again, the best answer I've been personally using is, I totally understand. In all honesty, Steve, 90% of my clients say the exact same thing, or said the exact same thing to me when they started out with us. But unlike most agencies who promise the world and deliver nothing, we pride ourselves on under promising and over delivering. Very, very good line, very, very clean, off the cuff. And again, it often works in most cases. And it just, again, these answers will get them to talk. It gets them to then kind of open up a bit more. Even if you don't specifically ask them questions, for the most part, you'll actually see that they start to open up slightly more. And at that point, that's when you can start diagnosing. Now, last and final objection: can you guarantee results? For the lower end clients, okay, for the lower end clients, of the 1, 2, maybe even 3K per month clients, this will be a very, very common objection. Once you start getting a bit higher ticket clients, high retainer clients, you actually won't see this objection or hear this objection nowhere near as much. I personally never get asked this objection anymore. And it's because, again, the concept of the higher ticket clients that you have will be your best clients. They actually don't, they do care, but they don't care as much as your clients who are at 1,000 per month or 500 per month. Well, technically you shouldn't have any clients below 1,000, but those clients that are 1,000, 2,000 per month, they're going to be the worst clients, and they're the ones that are going to ask for, guarantees in terms of results and whatnot. So a very, very good answer to that, again, is, in all transparency, I cannot guarantee results. With that being said, my agency is at a point now where we only ever work with clients who we know we can genuinely provide results for. And looking historically at my best converting clients, your business follows the exact same principle as theirs, which is why I know this is going to be a home run. Okay, again, that just almost reassures the client. It almost reassures them reassures them that they're making the right decision moving forward with your agency and all that type of stuff. But you never, ever want to guarantee results, okay, guys? Never guarantee it. Just if they say that, if they ask for that, just go about it in that way in terms of the objection. As I say, that's really all that's to it when it comes to objection handling. All they are is smoke screens. You need to just always remember that. If it's not a logistical objection in that they need to speak to their business partner or whatever other case may be, if it's not something that's logistical and you can genuinely believe them, it's like, yeah, okay, I genuinely understand that you can't move forward until you've done whatever it is, then just know it's a smoke screen. It's never that they actually have to think about it, because if you think about it, if the client can't come to a decision after a 45-minute call with you, after you going through everything from A to Z, like we did in the last module, going through the sales script, if they still can't come to a decision then they're not going to be able to come to a decision the next day or the day after, right? So they don't need to think about it. There's an underlying problem. So just always remember that. Always remember that you need to diagnose that underlying problem. And the best way to go about diagnosing it, or at least finding out what it actually is by using those answers that I just went through in that resource that you can find in the resources section, the objection handling resource. By using those answers in there, because that will either fix the objection, or it will get them to talk, it will get them to open up. And at that point, then you can also go about, handling it better in terms of actually talking about their real underlying problem. Okay, so that's that for this module. Super quick one. But this is how you want to go about objection handling, and objections often come at the end of the sales script As I mentioned in the last module where we went through the sales script, you would have heard me say, nearer the end after the close, watch the next module for objection handling. Well, that's this module, and this is what you want to use for that part in the script, okay? I hope you enjoyed. As always, any questions, any problems, leave it in the Quantum Leap Ecomm Agency Facebook group. And with that being said, guys, I will see you in the next module.